Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're diving into a career path you might not have on your radar. Dip tank operators?
Okay.
I'll be honest, I didn't know much about it either until I saw the research you sent over.
Yeah.
But after checking out RoleCatcher's guides, color me intrigued.
It's one of those jobs that's essential but often overlooked. Kind of like the unsung heroes of the manufacturing world.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
So you provided us with a bunch of info from RoleCatcher. And I have to say, their career guide for dig tank operators is surprisingly detailed.
it really is. It's not just like a list of duties. It digs into the nuances of the role and what makes it unique.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, paint a picture for us. What does a dip tank operator actually do?
At its core, they're responsible for applying coatings to various objects using, you guessed it, dip tanks. But it's more involved than just dunking things in paint. The guide emphasizes how important they are in ensuring quality and durability for everything from cars and airplanes to everyday items.
Wait, airplanes use this process?
Absolutely. That protective coating that keeps the metal from corroding.
Right.
Often the work of a skilled dip tank operator.
Wow, I had no idea. The guide also mentioned something about molten zinc.
That's right. It's called hot dip galvanizing, and it's used to create a rust-resistant coating, particularly on steel structures like bridges and guardrails.
Yeah.
It's a much more involved process than working with regular paint, requiring specialized skills and safety precautions.
Molten zinc, that sounds kind of dangerous. The guide did mention some potential hazards, but it also highlighted the pros of the job, like good pay and job security. I guess that comes with the territory, right?
Exactly. It's a trade-off. The work can be demanding, both physically and in terms of precision, but that often translates to good compensation and stability.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've established that it's not just dunking things in a bucket of paint. What else surprised you about the role from the RoleCatcher guides?
I think what struck me was the level of detail involved. The guide mentions they're responsible for everything from prepping the pieces and mixing the coating material to monitoring the temperature and viscosity, which is basically the thickness of the solution. It's a lot more scientific than people might think.
It sounds like they need a good understanding of the materials they're working with. Not just following a recipe, but actually knowing how it all works.
Absolutely. And the guide emphasizes the importance of problem-solving skills. If the coating isn't adhering properly, the dip tank operator needs to figure out why is it the temperature, the viscosity, the preparation of the object. It's like being a detective in the world of coatings.
So you've got to have an eye for detail.
Absolutely. Even a small inconsistency in the coating can cause major issues down the line, especially when you're talking about things like airplane parts or bridges.
That's a lot of pressure. So what does a typical day look like for a dip tank operator? Do they just stand around in a factory all day?
Not at all. The guide paints a pretty dynamic picture. A dip tank operator might start their day by inspecting the parts that need to be coated, making sure they're clean and prepped according to the specifications.
So there's a lot of prep work involved even before they get to the actual dipping.
Definitely. And it can be surprisingly technical. Depending on the material and the coating being applied, they might need to use different cleaning solutions, blasting techniques, or even chemical treatments.
It's like they're prepping a canvas for a masterpiece, only instead of a brush, they're using a giant vat of molten zinc.
Exactly. And speaking of the dipping process, that's where things get really interesting. They need to carefully control the speed and angle of immersion to ensure an even coating, all while monitoring the temperature and viscosity of the solution.
It sounds like a delicate balance of precision and timing.
Absolutely. And it's not just a one-and-done process. Often, they need to apply multiple coats, allowing for drying or curing time in between. And then comes the inspection process, making sure there are no drips, bubbles, or inconsistencies in the final product.
Okay, so attention to detail is clearly crucial. What other skills would make someone successful in this role?
The guide highlights the importance of being a problem solver. Things don't always go according to plan, so they need to be able to think on their feet, identify issues, and find solutions quickly.
That makes sense. You're dealing with machinery, chemicals, sometimes even extreme temperatures. There's bound to be the occasional hiccup.
Exactly. And because they're often working with hazardous materials, safety is paramount. The guide stresses the importance of following strict protocols, wearing appropriate protective gear, and knowing how to handle emergencies.
That's good to know. It's a reminder that this job, while potentially very rewarding, is not without its risks.
Definitely. But for those who are drawn to hands-on work, who enjoy seeing a tangible result of their efforts, and who are comfortable in a more industrial environment, It can be a great career path.
especially with the job security and potential for growth we talked about earlier. The guide mentioned that there are opportunities to specialize, right?
That's right. As you gain experience, you could choose to focus on a specific type of coding process, like powder coating or electroplating, or you could specialize in a particular industry, like automotive finishing or aerospace coatings.
So there's room to really carve out your niche. And that probably ties into the career progression as well, right?
Absolutely. The guide outlines a clear path from entry-level positions to more senior roles, like team lead or supervisor.
So even though it might not be a traditional corporate ladder, there's definitely a ladder to climb within the field.
Exactly. And the guide stresses the importance of continuous learning, whether it's taking additional certifications, attending industry conferences, or just staying up to date on the latest technologies. Those who are proactive about their professional development will have a definite advantage.
So you've got to be adaptable and always willing to learn new things. That actually segues nicely into something you mentioned earlier, the impact of automation. How is technology changing the role of a dip tank operator? It's the question on everyone's mind these days, right? Will robots take over?
Well, the guide didn't paint a picture of robots taking over completely, but it did emphasize that technology is changing the game. For example, some tasks, like loading and unloading parts, are being automated in many factories.
That makes sense. So, less heavy lifting, which could be a good thing for the humans involved. But what does that mean for the skills dip tank operators will need in the future?
It's less about manual labor and more about technical expertise. The guide suggested that operators who can troubleshoot automated systems, analyze data, and ensure quality control in a highly technical environment will be in high demand.
So it's like the role is leveling up. Instead of just operating the machinery, they're becoming ones to make sure the machinery is working correctly.
Exactly. It's about adapting and becoming even more skilled, and that's where RoleCatcher comes in again. They're not just about understanding the job, they're about helping you actually land the job, especially in a changing landscape.
Right. We haven't even gotten into the nitty-gritty of their platform yet. What stood out to you in the excerpts you saw?
Honestly, it was the sheer scope of their resources. They have a dedicated job board specifically for dip tank operators, which is amazing. No more sifting through irrelevant listings.
That's got to be a huge time saver. And you mentioned their AI-powered tools earlier. How do those work exactly?
They're like having a personalized career assistant. Their CV builder helps you tailor your resume to each job description, highlighting the specific skills and keywords employers are looking for.
So it's not just a generic template. It's about showcasing your unique strengths in a way that gets noticed.
Precisely. And their interview prep tools are phenomenal. They have a database of potential interview questions specific to dip tank operators, with sample answers and tips for crafting your own responses.
It's like having a cheat sheet for your career, though hopefully no one's actually cheating. But you know what I mean.
Of course.
Mhm.
They even have an AI-powered feedback feature where you can practice your answers and get personalized suggestions for improvement.
Wow, that's impressive. It sounds like they've really thought of everything to help people succeed in this field.
Hey.
So for anyone listening who might be intrigued by the world of dip tank operators, what's the key takeaway? What should they do next?
Take that first step. Explore the resources RoleCatcher provides. See what sparks your interest, and don't be afraid to dive into a career path that's both vital and constantly evolving.
Well said. It's been a fascinating deep dive into a field I knew very little about. Thanks to RoleCatcher, we've gone from what is a dip tank operator to how do I become one? But here's a final thought for our listeners. As technology continues to advance, what other overlooked or underestimated careers might be on the verge of a major transformation? Keep your eyes open, because the future of work is full of surprises. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.